All right, folks, peace and welcome to the culture here on the Black Star Network. I'm your host, Farajii. Thank you so much for tuning in and being a part of the conversation. Folks, we got a lot to talk about, a great set of conversations for you. First and foremost, let's talk about the latest as there's a new report that talks about the casualties that have been killed in the war in Gaza. The question that many people are asking is, will this Biden administration call for an immediate ceasefire? We're going to have that conversation. Also, looking at what happened and what's going on with the Supreme Court and President Trump's immunity case, election immunity case, we're going to look at the latest about what's happening there and ask the question, will SCOTUS put Trump on trial? We'll have that discussion. Later on, we're going to talk about how a TikTok story goes viral, but it opens up many questions about how we see relationships. And later, I'm going to tell you about one American city that has apologized to residents for its racist policies and what we can expect next. Stay with us. These conversations are coming up, and sharing your thoughts is coming up as well. So stay with us. Let's get it right into it. It's the culture right here on the Black Star Network. Let's go. Folks, welcome to the culture here on the Black Star Network. I'm your host, Farajii. Thank you so much for tuning in and being a part of the conversation. Folks, we are streaming live on a number of different platforms. So let your friends and family know that we are officially started today's show. Happy Thursday. And that we're streaming live first on our home network of blackstarnetwork.com. Download the app for free. Follow us on social media at Black Star Network. And more importantly, we ask for your donations to help power us through this digital space as we provide fantastic content like no other, especially on issues and topics affecting Black America. So go to our website today at blackstarnetwork.com. And we thank you for your support. Now, we're also streaming live on Amazon News and your Fire TV. Just take a look at there. Also, we're streaming on Amazon Prime Video. You can find us on the Prime Video app under Live TV, then News, or find us on Amazon.com under Prime Video, then Live TV, then News. And we're also streaming on the Freevee Network. You can find us under On Now, under News for Black Star Network, as well as Plex TV, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Just search for Black Star Network or find us under Live TV with news and opinions. Now, we're also streaming live on Big Brother Roland Martin's social media pages. First, check us out on his Facebook page as we're streaming there. So big shout out to the illustrious culture crew on the Facebook page, as well as on the X platform. So shout out to the crew there. And we're also streaming on Big Brother Roland Martin's YouTube channel. So big shout out to the online culture crew there as well. And let's see who's in the chat as we prepare for these big conversations. And I appreciate each and every one of you for joining us in the discussion. And as you get into the chat, as you get on Facebook, just make sure you hit that thumbs up button for me to show you that you are in support of the work that we're doing, the information we're providing, and the opportunity for you to be a part of the conversations. So big shout out to the Stephanie Humphrey channel. I see you. Pastor and Big Brother Damon Blissett, I see you. Thank you for checking in. Deidre Hall, I see you. Lori Parks, I see you. Tiana, I see you. We got Pauline Hurtis joining us as well. Big Brother Brian Christian, welcome back to the chat. Thank you, Brother Brian. Daniel, thank you for joining us. We got official Sanika for checking in. Donna McAdoo Kelly is checking in. Wow. Giselle said, Giselle, I'm here. Giselle, I see you, and thank you again for being a part of the conversation. And again, Giselle, we thank you for your donation yesterday. We truly, truly appreciate it. Folks, you can join us as well. So again, join us in the chat and make sure you post your comments, share your thoughts as we try to get through these conversations, because no conversation is complete without your feedback and your input. So join us right now. All right, let me just jump into it because we got a very short period of time. It's a lot that I wanted us to cover in today's show. First, let's talk about the latest that's coming out of Gaza, as there has been a more in-depth report about what we're seeing in terms of the number of casualties as a result of this ongoing conflict between Israel and Hamas. Now, it has been reported that Israel-Hamas war has now killed at least 30,000 Palestinians. Now, folks, you may remember that earlier this week I was sharing that that latest number with you, around 20,000, 29,000. But 30,000 Palestinians have already been killed. Most of them are civilians, and the report also shows that some 60% of the residential buildings in Gaza have been damaged, and 45% have been altogether destroyed, according to a World Bank report, folks. This is absolutely devastating, to say the least. And when we're looking at this situation, it puts more pressure on the conversation about whether President Biden is going to call for an immediate and permanent ceasefire. But has been saying, he said it earlier this week on the late night show with Seth Meyers, that his administration is in the works of doing something. His hope is to get something by Monday of next week. He said this past Monday night. So he said by Monday of next week that there should be some sort of deal made or struck with the Israeli government, with Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, around a permanent ceasefire. But it doesn't look like the ground attacks and the bombings and all of these attacks on the civilians of Palestine have actually slowed up or stopped at any place. Israel has signaled its intention to attack Rafah, which is the enclave's southernmost city, with estimated 1.4 million people are sheltering in squalid conditions, according to the latest set of reports. As I mentioned, some 70% of the dead Palestinians are women and children, folks. And these, according to figures published by the Palestinian Health Ministry. And many folks are saying that, yes, what we saw in Israel on October the 7th was an attack, but this is an even greater attack. Now, look, let me share with you. This is just some of the words from the report from NBC News that I want to share with you. Take a look. It says 70% of the dead Palestinians are women and children, according to the Palestinian Health Ministry. Many lawyers agree that Hamas' October 7th attack on Israel was a war crime. Israel, too, has been accused by rights watchdogs and United Nations officials of breaking international law in its response. Nothing can justify Hamas' deliberate killing, injuring, torturing, and kidnapping of civilians, the use of sexual violence, or the indiscriminate launching of rockets towards Israel, according to the UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres. He said in a speech this past Monday. But nothing justifies the collective punishment of the Palestinian people. International humanitarian law remains under attack, he says, and tens of thousands of civilians, including women and children, have been killed. Now, the other thing about this, folks, is that it's not only you're talking about 30,000 folks that have been killed, they have also pointed out that 1.7 million Palestinians and those within the Gaza and the West Bank have been displaced. So you have many more that have been displaced as a result of this conflict. Now, this is the thing about this, folks. In a few moments, we're going to take our first pause, but this is the thing about this. I had to, as I'm reading about the tragedy that's across the water, and I'm reading about what President Biden has been saying and how he said that his administration has been working on this, it made me think about the relationship that we do have with the Israeli government, with Israel. And it is something that I think that we need to look at, because this situation that we're seeing in 2024 has been something that has been, I would say, Israel has been preparing for some time now. Now, the very key part of this, the big concern about this chapter of violence between the two nations is that it now feels like, to the Palestinians and to some folks around the world in the United Nations, that this doesn't seem like it's just an attack just with the intention to find Hamas. This seems more like a genocidal ethnic cleansing effort that Israel has waged against the Palestinian people. Now, even though Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu denied that his government policy is to eradicate the people of Palestine, the folks from the West Bank and Gaza, it doesn't feel that way. It doesn't feel that way because, according to NBC News report, they said that coupled with the relentlessness of Israel's campaign, it's proof enough for Palestinians who say that this is not just about targeting Hamas. Now, if that's the case, folks, we really do have to take a look at this. And I know some folks might say, well, why are y'all talking about this? Why are we talking about this? We're talking about this. One is because we have to ask ourselves some important questions in this whole scenario, folks. Now that we know that the United States have been giving money to Israel, let me share this with you really quick. Did you know that back in 2016, a deal was struck with President Obama, former President Barack Obama? He sat down with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu at that time, and they struck a deal for a $38 billion military aid package for 10 years. This was struck back in 2016. So we're 8 years from the beginning of that deal. 2 more years are left in that deal. $38 billion. You're talking about $3.8 billion a year for military aid for Israel. Now, where did that money go? It went to the fighter jets. It went to the construction of the Iron Dome. It went to all the different military resources. Now, here's the question I think that we have to ask ourselves if we take our first pause. Knowing that the American taxpayers' money was being spent like that for the past 8 years, and there's no other country, folks, let me just tell you all this. There is no other country, and you could do the research yourself, that America has supported more financially than the state of Israel. Now, and since that's the case, we got to ask ourselves, with our money, what type of return is the American people getting on that level of quote unquote investment? We have to ask ourselves 2 questions, and then we're going to take our pause. The first question is, are we okay with funding an effort that many people around the globe is saying it's a genocidal effort? Are we okay with that as taxpayers in this country? That's the first question. And the second question is, are we okay with the possibility of our money being used to make us accomplices and make us complicit in war crimes? Because that's the other charge that's being levied against the state of Israel at this time. We know that Hamas had attacked, and that attack of October 7th was one of an attack that some folks said 1,200, others said 1,400. But now that we know that the Palestinians have suffered with being displaced, the Palestinians have suffered a higher death toll, and there doesn't seem to be no relief in sight, even though the president is talking about this. Where's the return on the investment for the American people? And isn't this enough to put onto this president? Because we know Trump is not going to do it. But for this president, who seemed to say that, look, I care about the American people. I care about making sure that our standing is good in this world. I care about making sure that democracy reigns supreme. But is that the case? And now I'm going to take a quick pause. When we come back on the other side, I'm going to share with you why we should even be having this conversation as Black people in this country. So, folks, I want you to post your comments, share your thoughts as we talk about this. The numbers have come out to verify that there have been over 30,000 deaths as a result of this war. Many of those have been women and children in vulnerable populations of Gaza and the West Bank. And are we okay with that? I'm going to try to do my best. I'm telling you, I'm going to share with you why it's important that Black America understand that we need to make sure that we speak up and put the right amount of pressure and hold this administration accountable, because we are contributing to that tragedy across the water. Stay with me. That conversation continues on the other side here on The Culture on the Black Star Network.
Check this out. Joe Biden and Kamala Harris are investing a record $7 billion into HBCUs. Billions for campus improvements, grants, and debt relief. Billions more for HBCUs. Endless possibilities for us.
You heard why we're marching, and it's really a launch. It's not even a march. We're launching a 42-week campaign, March the 2nd at 10 o'clock in Raleigh and 33 other state capitals and the District of Columbia. This is a historic move to mobilize the most powerful untapped block of voters in this country, poor and low wealth voters, who make up 87 million votes. And it's never been tried before. Never been tried before in history. At the same time, the same message, same focus. And when that power turns loose, they will not be able to figure out the political calculus. I don't know about you, but I'm ready to shake things up. I'm ready to get up out of the valley. I'm ready for God to put his spirit on us. I'm ready to be used to change this nation. And what we're saying is, can't we come together? Can't we come together around an agenda? You ain't got to like everything about Reverend Barbara. You don't have to like everything about Sangria. You don't have to like everything about Long Choir. But can we come together and say, it's time to end poverty as the fourth leading cause of death? It's time to have $15 and a living wage indexed with inflation. So every time inflation goes up, the minimum wage goes up. It's time to have health care for all. It's time to fully fund public education. Can't we come together? It's time to protect women's right to women's health. It's time to have affordable housing for everybody. It's time to stop the proliferation of guns. Ain't no way folk ought to be able to have more guns than they have food, more guns than they have meat on their table. That makes no sense. Isn't it time for division to be ended and love to take over? Can't we organize around that? Look at your neighbor and say, neighbor, I don't need to like everything about you, but can't we organize for power? Can't we stand for justice? Can't we love everybody for just a little while? Can't we come up out of the valley? Can these bones live?
All right, folks, welcome back to The Culture here on the Black Star Network. I'm your host, Farajii Muhammad. We are talking right now. We're talking about the latest numbers coming out of the Gaza West Bank region, where it has been reported that 30,000 Palestinians have already lost their lives in this conflict between Israel and Hamas. 30,000, 1.7 million have been displaced as a result of the relentless ground attack, air attack that we're seeing in that region. And it doesn't look like there's any real light at the end of the tunnel, even though President Biden has been saying over these past few days that his administration is working on a ceasefire. This is one of the biggest points of contention that people are having with this administration. And we're seeing it. And part of the reason that I wanted to bring this up today is because I have been inspired by so many different conversations and voices. I've been inspired by my sister, Rahel Tesfamariam, who on Tuesday, we talked about her book, Imagine Freedom. I've been inspired by reading about what Arab Americans in Michigan is doing. I've been inspired so much so, folks, to hear what is being said right now, to see the chatter and to share this and to feel like, you know what, we need to have more conversation on this. If the American people have been paying taxes to this country, and then this country uses our money to fund efforts that will lead to the destruction and annihilation of another group of people, that can't be left. Oh, well, that doesn't concern me. How can we not have something to say about this at this time, considering the fact that as Black people in this country, we expect the American government to do something for us by way of financial repair in the form of reparations. We expect some sort of return on the investment of our time, our sweat, blood, and tears because of what we have been able to do in building this country. We are the bedrock of this country. And yet we're seeing that more money, more resources, more aid is given to a foreign nation than it is to its own citizens who have been screaming for justice. We see just our brother Reverend William Barber talking about the great demonstration that he's planning this weekend in all of these in all of these state capitals, just to get us $15 an hour. And look at the fight in many states around that. Just to talk about voting rights, look at the fights around that. Just to talk about, and let's not even talk about reparations, and we're going to have a conversation about that later on today, but talk about reparations and how much fight that we have to give. But in the state of Israel, unfettered, unattacked, $3.8 billion of military aid has been given for the past 8 years. And now it is all of that aid that has led to the fortification of their armed services and their military might. And now we're seeing their might being put to use to commit these horrible, horrible crimes against the people of Palestine, in the West Bank, and the Gaza Strip. It's crazy. Let me share with you something from the U.S. News and World Report, because I had to make sure that I brought some facts and figures, because I want to make sure that we're clear on the context of this. And this is why we're asking the question, will the president call for an immediate ceasefire? Because if he wants to be the president, he talks about this, to be the president of saving democracy, then that has to start with the budget. What are the financial priorities of the United States government? And then this is not just on Biden. Unfortunately, President Biden is the recipient of this criticism, but this goes back way before Biden even got into office. Take a look and listen to this very quickly, then we're going to move on. This is from U.S. News and World Report. It says for nearly 3 decades, from 1974 to 2002, Israel was the top recipient of U.S. aid, the longest standing duration for a top aid recipient dating back to 1946, according to figures from foreignassistant.gov. While from 2003 to 2020 saw the most aid going to either Iraq or Afghanistan, Israel nevertheless remained a top 3 aid recipient throughout that time. This is from U.S. News and World Report. This is not my information. This is what's already been put out for public consumption. In 2021, U.S. obligations to Israel amounted to $3.31 billion, a figure that saw Israel returning to the top spot among aid recipients that year. And I already shared with you that in 2016, President Obama sat down with Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and struck a deal for $38 billion for a 10-year period. This is the 8th year of that 10-year period. So that means that if President Biden goes back into the White House in 2024 and he starts his term in 2025, that time to the end of that 10-year deal will be coming up during the course of his term. Will he redefine the relationship that America has with Israel, or will he keep that money train going? Now, this is why I'm sharing this with you, because I want us to see that what has happened in the past affects the policy of today, and it dictates the agenda for the future that's coming forward before us, right? And we have to look at this. Now, let's go to why this is important to Black America as we close this thing out. This is important for Black America because there's a saying that says the budget is a moral document. Right? Some people have said, Dr. King have said it, and others have said it. There was no actual attribution to Dr. King, but this is what Dr. King has said when he spoke at the Riverside Church in New York City on April the 4th, 1967, a year to the day that he was assassinated. It was that year, the most challenging year of his public service life, because he decided to stand up and speak out and speak truth to power about the war in Vietnam at Riverside Church. But this is what Dr. Martin Luther King said, and I don't know, Lisa, if we could put it up. He said, a nation that continues year after year to spend more money on military defense than on programs of social uplift is approaching spiritual death. I want you to keep that right there. A nation that continues year after year to spend more money on military defense than on programs of social uplift is approaching spiritual death. How come the call for Black people in America, for reparations, for voting rights, for wage equality, for all of these things seem to fall on deaf ears? Because this isn't not just about dollars and cents, but we are actually embarked upon a time where our government is losing its sense of morality because of the budget priorities. And see, what's happening now is that as much as the president may say, look, we need to save democracy, and we do if we want to sustain, but there needs to be and I heard President Obama say this at he talked about this when he was celebrating the 15th year anniversary of him becoming in office in Chicago. It was late last year. And he said that we must redefine and reimagine a different democracy. But if the democracy that we are seeing right now has always been built on not just dollars and cents, but a sense of morality, folks. But then we're finding that, as Dr. King said, that if you keep putting more money into the defense and not into programs of social uplift, then there's a spiritual death that starts to happen. How can we as Black people expect that the government will hear our cries? Because our cries isn't just about the dollars and cents. Our cries is rooted in morality. It's rooted in justice of what's right and what's wrong. But imagine you crying out, calling for justice. We're crying out for voting rights and wage equality and all of these things and healthcare disparities. And we're saying, Mr. President, and to the Congress, we need this, we need that. We aren't whole. We are broken people. We have contributed day in and day out. We have given our blood, sweat, and tears to this country, only to fall on deaf ears. But then when it's time to go to war, money can be found in a blink of an eye, at the drop of a dime. And so for those who say, well, why Black America should be concerned with this? Because we have to call out the hypocrisy. We can't just allow our tax dollars to help a foreign nation to do what they want and destroying another people. But then when we ask for the government, hey, can you set aside a few $1 billion for this or for that? It's like being in a relationship. America's in a full-fledged relationship with Israel. Y'all gonna hate me today, I'm telling you. America's in a full-fledged relationship with Israel. But it's in a situationship with Black America. Let me say that again. It's in a full-fledged relationship with Israel. They go together. But when it comes to Black America, it's a situationship. And y'all know how some of us, you ever been in a connection with has been undefined, a situationship, a sneaky link, right? And then the person just breadcrumbs. We get little pieces here, little pieces there to hold on to give us the hope that something will manifest. And we've been breadcrumbed too long in this country, y'all. And that's why I'm looking at this situation. And that's why people might say, oh, man, you're trying to mess up the election. No, it's not. We know Trump is not going to do these things. But if the president has said it himself that he wants to be the guy for this job, he wants to save democracy, well, then, Mr. President, with all due respect, we're going to hold you accountable to those words. We got to. We got to. But we can't keep getting breadcrumbs. And you got a house, you bought the other person a car, they got a full-fledged relationship. But for us, it's a little something in the night. can't be seen during the day, can't speak too loud about our pain, our interests. Y'all with me, y'all? Y'all with me? I'm not trying to make mockery of the situation. I'm just saying that the relationship that we have, and this is why we do have the issues of voting and all of these things, because, and this is why we have some of the infighting that occurs in Black leadership, occurs in Black organizations, because no one in Black America is clear about the relationship. There is no priority set aside in the budget for us. There's no sense of moral dilemma that's placed on the relationship. Between America and Israel, you have a better sense of where folks are and where people stand and what's the moral priority. In the relationship with Black America, none of that is defined. So we do have to say something. If President Biden is going to be the president of the United States for Black America, then we need a clear, defined relationship. I want a return on the investment too. And I don't want my taxpayer dollars for some of you who say, well, what can the president do? We got a gridlock in Congress. We got Netanyahu over there. The president can redefine the relationship. He can say, look, we could spend less money until you show more humanity to the people of Israel, to the people of Palestine. You could redefine that relationship on many different levels. But you got to ask the question, does he want to do it? And does he want to put all the resources of his office and his administration behind it to show that he is serious about saving democracy, that he is serious about building a better relationship with Black and brown and other people in this country who feel marginalized and disenfranchised? Is he serious about standing on morals in terms of taking those budget priorities and putting them somewhere else, as Dr. King said? Because if there's more money, 3.8 billion, then 3.9 billion, then $4 billion, what's going to be the spiritual future of this country? Folks, we got to take a quick pause. When we come forward, we're going to bring my brother, Dr. Wendell Griffin. He's going to be joining us as we talk about this Trump case. Just something for us to think about as we move forward. And I hope that you really do think about these things. Stay with me, folks. It's The Culture here on the Black Star Network.
Black Star Network is here.
Oh, no punch!
I'm real revolutionary right now.
Thank you for being the voice of Black America.
All momentum we have now, we have to keep this going.
The video looks phenomenal.
See, there's a difference between Black Star Network and Black-owned media and something like CNN.
You can't be Black-owned media and be scared.
It's time to be smart.
Bring your eyeballs home.
You dig?
Check this out. Joe Biden and Kamala Harris are investing a record $7 billion into HBCUs. Billions for campus improvements, grants, and debt relief. Billions more for HBCUs. Endless possibilities for us.
When you talk about Blackness and what happens in Black culture, we're about covering these things that matter to us, speaking to our issues and concerns.
This is a genuine people-powered movement.
There's a lot of stuff that we're not getting. You get it, and you spread the word.
We wish to plead our own cause. Too long have others spoken for us. We cannot tell our own story if we can't pay for it. This is about covering us. Invest in Black-owned media. Your dollars matter. We don't have to keep asking them to cover our stuff. So please support us in what we do, folks. We want to hit 2,000 people, $50 this month, raise $100,000. We're behind 100,000, so we want to hit that. Y'all money makes this possible. Check some money orders. Go to P.O. Box 57196, Washington, D.C. 20037-0196. The Cash App is $RM Unfiltered. PayPal is R Martin Unfiltered. Venmo is RM Unfiltered. Zelle is Roland@RolandSMartin.com.
Folks, welcome back to the culture here on the Black Star Network. I'm your host, Farajii Muhammad. Thank you so much for tuning in and being a part of the conversation. All right. Talked a little bit about what's going on. So much for us to think about. And I hope that we have more conversations. That is the plan, to have more conversations for this. There's just so much to unpack, folks, so much to unpack. But I did want to at least get the conversation started or add a little bit more to the discussion that we've already been having. But now I want to switch gears. I want us to talk a little bit about the latest situation with SCOTUS, the Supreme Court of the United States, and how their latest decision to possibly delay. Look at this, y'all. They talking about delaying bringing the case of former President Donald Trump, delaying that review of the case for later on than expected, pushing back the whole calendar to essentially delay President Trump from being judged or prosecuted in the Supreme Court until possibly after the election. It's a crazy scenario. But we wanted to bring in one who is very, very familiar with the legal system, the justice system. So I want to welcome back to the airwaves of the culture here on the Black Star Network, my brother, Pastor Wendell Griffin, who was a retired state judge out of the state of Arkansas. And he is an author of many books talking about politics and justice. Brother Pastor, thank you so much, Brother Wendell, for being with us today. You jumped in on a day that there's so much that needed to be said, big brother, so much that needed to be said. How are you today? Oh, we got you on mute. There we go.
Okay, I'm doing fine. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir. We can, Pastor. We can. Thank you, folks.
Listen, you're doing a fantastic job, and I need to give you your props, okay? I need to give you your props because the segment you just now did on Israel is just so necessary, so righteous. And I'll say one thing about that, and then I'll go to what I'm doing on SCOTUS. I ask you, what continent is Palestine located in? And they look at me blankly. I remind them, it's Africa. 30,000 Africans in Palestine have been killed in 4 months by money paid for by the United States government. The United States government gave KKK $3.8 billion a year. And they used that money to kill 30,000 folks in California, Chicago, or Arkansas. We would be furious. And we ought to be furious about it because the Palestinians are Africans. For all the reasons you mentioned, brother, we should be furious. We should be furious because Joe Biden has the power to stop it. When Iraq invaded Kuwait, the United States imposed a no-fly zone. Joe Biden can impose a no-fly zone. Could have done it 3 months ago over Gaza. He has the Sixth Fleet in the Mediterranean, right off the shores of Israel. He could have said to Netanyahu, you cannot fire into Gaza, otherwise my jets will take down your helicopters and we will cancel your Iron Dome. Joe Biden hasn't done it. So let's be real clear. The United States has not only supported Israel for the last 76 years, $150 billion with a B, the biggest foreign aid package in the world to Israel. But the United States has sat back and armed Israel and watched Israel starve, bomb, torture, burn, and terrorize defenseless Palestinians for the last 4 months with our tax dollars. And in the name of everything that is decent and right, we declare that wrong. And Joe Biden thinks that folks who are going to pay attention to elections are going to sit back
Mm, and Pastor, I know that the sound is coming in kind of in and out. I don't know if you can just make sure that we can speak up so we can hear what you got to say. But I've caught on to what you were saying in terms of the complicity of our president, and that's why not to speak too far on it because I wanted to get your take on what's happening with the Supreme Court. But there has to be a call for accountability. There has to be some changes, a call for some changes in that relationship, which is always what we're asking for. Is that what is going to change in that relationship? You can't say one thing. Oh well, we're going to usher in peace, and then on another level, those things that has been in place for many years outside of the Biden administration, we know that. Continues to go unfiltered, unfettered, and in a way that it doesn't. So we need to change that relationship. And this is why I think, Pastor, this case around Donald Trump in the Supreme Court is just so interesting because the Supreme Court for a long time held it was perceived that this was going to be the one court that justice will be rendered. Right. For many of our people, of course, especially during the civil rights movement and other time frames, we relied on the Supreme Court to render justice when the states didn't. Now we're at a time, and this is my concern, Pastor, we're at a time where this court is moving like a political party and less like a court of law that is rooted in justice. And so that's what we're seeing with this latest situation with former President Trump, that they are actually looking to delay the time. Talk to us about this. Like, what does that mean if they're saying, according to the reports that I've been reading, that they're going to hear oral arguments the week of April 22nd about whether whether Trump is entitled to presidential immunity or not. And then by that timeline, that's going to push everything else back. And so we may not even see any type of review of his full case until after the election. Am I understanding this correctly, sir?
You're exactly right, brother. Can you hear me okay now?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay, you're exactly right. Here's exactly what's going on. The United States Supreme Court chose, everybody needs to understand this clearly, chose to accept a petition for certiorari by Donald Trump's team to decide the issue of his presidential immunity. Now, no court has before now said that Donald Trump is entitled to immunity. The United States Supreme Court of Appeals for the District of Columbia, the second highest federal court in the land, said no, he's not entitled to immunity. Judge Chutkan said no, he's not entitled to immunity. No court has said he's entitled to immunity. So there is no reason for the Supreme Court to accept this case unless they intend to try to either change what the lower courts have said, or they want to give Donald Trump more time to run out the clock before the election, before he's tried. This is what's going on. This is what's going on. And you can't get away from it. I mean, you can't put that in a box. That is clear. And there's no reason for the Supreme Court to do that. And you add on top of that, Clarence Thomas is on the case. His wife.
He hasn't recused himself from this case yet?
Clarence Thomas hadn't recused the case. Now listen, if my wife, and I love my wife, if my wife was on a case, had paid money to a side that was on a case before me, I would have an obligation ethically to A, disclose that, and B, recuse to avoid the very appearance that my wife's relationship to one of the parties might be a factor in the case. Clarence Thomas has not done that, and the members of the Supreme Court haven't made him do that, and there's nothing that's going to make him do that because Clarence Thomas will not do what's right. Donald Trump knows that, and that's why Donald Trump has been trying to get this immunity issue going all the Supreme Court in the first place. If the Supreme Court says, hey, we don't have to take this case because the issue of immunity is not in dispute, no federal court has said he's got immunity, we don't disagree, there's no reason for us to overturn those decisions, Clarence Thomas just sit there like a non-log and couldn't do a thing.
Wow.
But by then accepting the case, Clarence Thomas now gets a chance to use his influence. He is the most senior member of the Supreme Court.
Okay. That is crazy. That is absolutely insane. We got to take a quick pause, and Pastor Griffin, we're gonna try to get back and fix your sound just in a few moments, just to make sure that we get some final remarks from you about this whole situation, folks. We're talking about the Supreme Court and them possibly delaying any type of review of the case against former President Donald Trump till after the election, which is exactly what the former president has been wanting for the Supreme Court to do. Folks, stay with us. The conversation continues on the other side with Pastor Wendell Griffin and with you here on The Culture on the Black Star Network.
Check this out. Joe Biden and Kamala Harris are investing a record $7 billion into HBCUs. Billions for campus improvements, grants, and debt relief. Billions more for HBCUs. Endless possibilities for us.
Talk about blackness and what happens in black culture. We're about covering these things that matter to us, speaking to our issues and concerns.
This is a genuine people-powered movement.
There's a lot of stuff that we're not getting. You get it, and you spread the word.
We wish to plead our own cause. Too long have others spoken for us. We cannot tell our own story if we can't pay for it.
This is about covering us. Invest in black-owned media. Your dollars matter. We don't have to keep asking them to cover our stuff. So please support us in what we do, folks. We want to hit 2,000 people, $50 this month, raise $100,000. We're behind 100,000, so we want to hit that. Y'all money makes this possible. Check some money orders. Go to P.O. Box 57196, Washington, D.C. 20037-0196. The Cash App is $RM Unfiltered. PayPal is R Martin Unfiltered. Venmo is RM Unfiltered. Zelle is Roland at RolandSMartin.com.
I'm Greg Carr, here at the Black Table, and you're watching the Black Star Network.
All right, folks, welcome back to the culture here on the Black Star Network. I'm your host, Farajii Muhammad. We were talking to my brother, Pastor Wendell Griffin, who is a retired state judge, for the state of Arkansas. And we're talking about the latest situation with the Supreme Court looking, and they haven't made that decision yet. I want to make sure I'm clear on understanding this process, right, Pastor Griffin, that the Supreme Court has not officially made that decision about whether they're going to, the timeline for them to review the case, hear oral arguments. Am I correct on that? Is that they haven't made that determination just yet?
They have set oral arguments, and they have agreed to accept his case. They've scheduled oral arguments for April, and so it's on their docket now.
Okay.
Before yesterday, the question was, would he be on their docket? Now we know. The Supreme Court has said, yes, he can be heard. And now we've got to wait until April. And what this means is no judge, Judge Chutkan in D.C. cannot proceed with her trial. The judge in Florida, the federal judge in Florida, can't proceed with the trial on the classified documents because Trump's got a federal immunity claim. Now let's think about it. No court before now has said he's immune. So there's not a question about whether or not another judge or court says so. Trump is basically on the docket, and we got to wait until April before we even hear his arguments, and it'll be probably June before we make a decision.
So let me ask you this then, Pastor. If with that being the case, what kind of recourse is we're basically in a sit and watch space, right?
Yeah.
So he can go on campaigning, and I got to check to see when the RNC's national convention is. But most likely he's going to be the nominee.
Yeah.
So once he goes through that process, and then April comes up, and then they start listening to oral arguments, and so essentially this one, I just want us to, and I want folks to understand what just happened over the past 24 hours. He pretty much has a clear pathway to get the nomination for the Republican Party, and he may have a pathway with even in the oral arguments to have a case that's going to be after the November election. So he's going to kind of be walking through. That means that any other case that's brought against him, how does that affect the case in Georgia? You talked about Judge Chutkan in D.C., but what about the case in Georgia?
It doesn't stop the case in Georgia because that's state law.
Okay.
His immunity claim only applies to federal criminal prosecution. He does not have an immunity from state prosecution. He's contending that because he was president of the United States, he is immune from criminal prosecution under federal law on the two federal cases he got. One involving the classified documents in Florida, the other one involving the insurrection in January 6th. Now, those are the federal cases. But remember, the two state cases are the ones he's really worried about because they are under state law. New York, Alvin Bragg has got a conspiracy case, the Stormy Daniels conspiracy case. And Fannie Willis has got that 91 count racketeering case. And Donald Trump is scared out of his drawers on both of those cases because even if he is reelected, he cannot escape and cannot pardon himself on either of those state cases.
Wow. But my team just informed me that the RNC convention is coming up in July, mid-July, in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. So we're talking about July the 15th. And so since this is the convention comes up in July, this oral argument starts in April. Will there be any issues between that time, those two dates? Can anything come up to stop Trump?
Let's assume that they hear oral arguments in April.
Mm-hmm.
SCOTUS usually comes down with their decisions at the end of June, the end of their term. So we can expect them to come up with a decision the last part of June, the first part of July. At the earliest.
At the earliest.
Yes.
And now, given that this is a super conservative bench, what's the likelihood that their judgment is going to be in favor of justice?
Well, I don't think is in favor of justice already because they decided to take the case. The just thing for them to do is say, hey, there is no case to take. There is no dispute on the lower courts about his immunity issues. We have never held that any politician is entitled to immunity from criminal prosecution for acts they commit while they're in office after they leave office. Trump can't kill somebody, and to use his words, stand in the middle of Fifth Avenue, commit murder while he's in office. Wow. And then after he gets office, avoid being tried as a murderer. His argument says he can because he was president at the time. Now, here's what Trump's lawyers are going to do. Three things quickly. First of all, they're going to say, well, he's immune because what happened on January 6th were official acts. That's just stupid, okay? He was campaigning. He was making a campaign speech on January 6th. That was not an official act of his presidency. He was a candidate. They're going to say, well, this classified documents, he's the chief classifier in chief, and so he has the power to classify documents. Yes, he has, but he doesn't have the power to steal documents that are classified. And he's charged with taking and keeping and refusing to return classified documents. So that's not an official act. You can't claim that your official duty is to be a crook.
That's crazy.
And say your job is to be the chief executive officer to ensure full faith and compliance of all the laws.
That's crazy.
So the Supreme Court has already, by accepting his immunity claim, has already done something unjust. I'm going to say it point blank, and some of you callers may be mad, but if Barack Obama had said that,
come on,
if Barack Obama, after he left office, claimed that he was immune for the rest of his life from being prosecuted for criminal activity he committed while as president, white folks across this country would be in the streets.
Well, we know, and Pastor, we know, right? I mean, that's a given. That we know that. My concern is now that that not only are we talking about delay, but we're also talking about, like you said, that the injustice started with the fact that they accepted the case, and so at this point, it's like the president can take any case, appeal it, toss it to his people at the Supreme Court because they got his back. And if the Supreme Court sets that at the precedent of how they're going to handle the legal issues affecting this man, then the trust of the Supreme that we have in the Supreme Court and the decline, it is going to go down into the toilet. I mean, we're not going to feel like, it opens the door. And again, this is for Black America, Pastor. You know it and I know it. If we can't get justice from the highest court in the land, and because we're battling on the state level with some of these courts where Republicans and others have reigned supreme, but we can't find justice in the highest court in the land. My final question to you is, what's the recourse? If the American people, not just Black people, if goodwill white people and Latinos and Asian Americans and all of these folks said, hey, this guy is not good for democracy. If the president says, hey, this guy is not good for democracy, and the Supreme Court says, he gave us the job, so we can't hold him liable because he gave us a job, then what's the recourse that the American people can take at this point? I mean, how do we look at it as the highest court in the land?
Well, we don't have, and the point you make is right on target, Brother Muhammad. The Black people in this country have historically known that we could not get justice in state courts, but we have, since Brown versus Board of Education, have wanted to believe that in the federal courts we could get justice. The problem we have is that this Supreme Court under John Roberts, and this is why I opposed John Roberts from the moment that George W. Bush nominated him. John Roberts has always been anti-civil rights and has been more interested in doing what was popular with the right wing than was doing what was right. And we see that now.
We see it. We see it. We see it. Pastor Wendell Griffin, I appreciate you, brother. I thank you for your insight, and you know, you and I both are going to watch how this situation plays out. But this is a hell of a thing to be experiencing during a major presidential election season, that we're seeing all of these things happening. And there still is this huge expectation for Black folks, for white people, for a lot of people to go to the polls. And, you know, for all of the voting advocates out there, this may be, and this is not going to be on President Biden. I'm telling you, this is going to be on the institutions of this country. We may see the lowest voter turnout because of apathy. We may see the lowest voter turnout in history because of people are tired of feeling like their voice is not being heard. We may see the lowest voter turnout because of injustice. This is going to be a banner year for democracy, and for a number of different reasons, Pastor. And we're just going to have to learn. We're going to have to figure out how to get through it. But I appreciate you, brother, for your time today.
Good talking to you, Farajii. Keep strong,
Good
brother.
Thank you, brother. Yes, sir. Absolutely. Folks, we got to take a quick pause. When we come forward, let's switch gears. We're going to check in with Coach Trinette El Collier, my brother Sinead Wakofor. Let's talk a little bit about relationships and so much more. Stay with us. It's The Culture here on the Black Star Network.
Check this out. Joe Biden and Kamala Harris are investing a record $7 billion into HBCUs. Billions for campus improvements, grants, and debt relief. Billions more for HBCUs. Endless possibilities for us.
You heard why we're marching, and it's really a launch. It's not even a march. We're launching a 42-week campaign. March the 2nd at 10 o'clock in Raleigh and 33 other state capitals and the District of Columbia. This is a historic move to mobilize the most powerful untapped block of voters in this country, poor and low wealth voters, who make up 87 million votes. And it's never been tried before. Never been tried before in history. At the same time, same message, same focus. And when that power turns loose, they will not be able to figure out the political calculus. I don't know about you, but I'm ready to shake things up. I'm ready to get up out of the valley. I'm ready for God to put his spirit on us. I'm ready to be used to change this nation. And what we're saying is, can't we come together? Can't we come together around an agenda? You ain't got to like everything about Reverend Barber. You don't have to like everything about Sangria. You don't have to like everything about Long Choir. But can we come together and say, it's time to end poverty as the fourth leading cause of death? It's time to have $15 and a living wage indexed with inflation. So every time inflation goes up, the minimum wage goes up. It's time to have health care for all. It's time to fully fund public education. Can't we come together? It's time to protect women's right to women's health. It's time to have affordable housing for everybody. It's time to stop the proliferation of guns. Ain't no way folk ought to be able to have more guns than they have food, more guns than they have meat on their table. That makes no sense. Isn't it time for division to be ended and love to take over? Can't we organize around that? Look at your neighbor and say, neighbor, I don't need to like everything about you, but can't we organize for power? Can't we stand for justice? Can't we love everybody for just a little while? Can't we come up out of the valley? Can these bones live?
All right, folks, welcome back to the culture here on the Black Star Network. I'm your host, Farajii Muhammad. Thank you so much for tuning in and being a part of the conversation. I wanted to switch gears. So much politics we talked about, but let's talk a little bit more. Let's switch gears. Let's get into a space of relationships, because in the midst of all of this stuff, sometimes your mind can go into a lot of different places. And you might find that, you can go hard in the paint on your politics, but your relationships are falling apart. And so what we try to do here on the culture is try to provide an overall all balanced approach to all things that affect the culture. And so I'm welcoming back to the airways my sister, Coach Trinette L. Collier, who is a relationship specialist. And I got my brother, Sinedu Wakwafor, who is an activist and DEI specialist as well, as we got some conversations lined up for both of our brother and sister. Sinedu, Trinette, thank you so much for joining us. I truly appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely, absolutely. All right, let's start talking first. Trinette, you and I were chatting about this.
Yeah.
So I want to start talking about this situation that we saw on TikTok. For those who aren't familiar with TikTok, y'all know TikTok, that social media platform where people tell about their whole lives and all of that stuff. Well, apparently there was a Black woman named Risa M. Tessa who created a TikTok. It was like a damn reality show slash. And she went on TikTok and she called it "Who the F Did I Marry?"
Mm-hmm.
It ended up being a 10-minute increments, about 50 parts of this sister telling the story of meeting, dating, and divorcing a man she called a pathological liar. And it essentially involves this Black woman from Atlanta talking about her experiences with her ex-husband, who she was only married to for 5 months. I said 5 minutes. Well, 5 months of the marriage is 5 minutes. But for 5 months, she was talking about it. It averaged, Brother Sinedu, her story averaged at least 1 million views per video since the first video went up on February the 14th. And as a result of her telling her story in 50 parts on TikTok, she was able to secure some type of deal, right? You said, Trinette?
Yeah.
She had some book deal or something. What was the deal that she got from it?
Tubi wants to do a movie on her. Wants to do one of their movies, and I heard Lifetime wants to do something, but I know for sure they said Tubi reached out to her. So I'm like, wow. And she did collect funds from TikTok and from a lot of the followers. So she is capitalizing off of her 50-part drama series.
That is crazy. Now, here's the thing. This is the reason why I wanted us to talk about this and have my brother Sinedu in this as well, because as much as he talks politics, he also follows the culture. So, but the thing is, we're seeing something, I think, with social media being such an influence the way it is now. But in terms of we're seeing people putting their lives out there.
Right.
And in an attempt, and I don't know if they're just putting their lives out there in a therapeutic way. You and I were talking about this, Trinette, or if they're just putting their lives out there to capitalize off of it, Brother Sinedu, where they just say, you know what? I'm going to put all of my dirty laundry out there, because guess what? Dirty laundry sells nowadays.
Yeah.
Coach, I'm going to start with you on this one. What do you think the motivation was for Sister Risa? What's it, Risa?
It's Risa Tisa.
Risa Tisa. What do you think her motivation was?
You know what? First, I want to let people know that it's not, some people are like, oh, people just hating on her, this, that, another. Listen, when I listened to the first episode, and I automatically knew what the ending was going to be, right? I mean, a lot of us have the familiar stories. And I wrote a book about it. But one thing I'm worried about this culture, in this era, the question is, are we doing it for therapeutic healing, or is it for capitalizing it, monetizing, however? But my concern is, when you're sharing out your stories like this, when I wrote my story, I didn't want to share it out. I wasn't trying to make money off of it, this, that, and other. But the question comes in, is it true or not? You know, you could be a good storyteller. If you're a good storyteller, that's fine. But now you have people that are engrossed and invested in your story. And so my question would be, how authentic were you on this? Were you just releasing? And you know, why did you choose to release it this way or whatnot? So that was like, you know, as I told you, that was some, you know, a few questions that I had, like, what made you go onto a social media platform and release this versus, you know, dealing with it privately? Like, do we handle these things privately anymore? Like, tell me, because do I need to go back and,
Right.
and do me a TikTok on my story, or, you know, I don't know. So that's just my question. Like, is that the direction that we're going in when we're resolving these issues, these you know, your private issues? I still believe in the sanctity of privacy. You know, some things I just feel like you should just handle between you, God, and your therapist or whatnot, you know, or your tribe. But that's what I'm worried about in this era that we're, you know, living in with social media. That's my take on it.
Hey, brother Sinead, what you think, bro? In terms of how we're expressing ourselves, how we're telling our stories, and then we're seeing it in such a very weird way, right? And it's like privacy is out the window. We say that and I'm with Trinette on this. I'm not sure if this is healing or if it's just people are just looking for entertainment for their content.
Yeah.
What's your take on it, bro?
So I'm coming from the capitalistic point of view.
Come on, hit it.
In the 1900s, there was a boat called the Titanic that sailed and it sank. And then 70, 80 years later, they made a movie that's about a love story. Not even about a Titanic. Story didn't even exist. And they made hundreds of millions of dollars. Here's my thing about Ressa Tessa. Whatever happens, Risa Tisa, it's happening on her terms. That's how I feel. Even if her story is fake, the cautionary story in there is real. And I think when you look at what we have now as social media that now serves as a free market for folks in the entertainment to tell their own stories, and then many people can pick them up, I think that's very powerful. Because lest we forget, we were talking about this a couple of months ago. I think his name is Michael Otter, the NFL player, The Blind Side.
Yeah.
Find out that family was lying on that man's name, collecting money. So I bring this up to say, I am not going to be the morality police. I'm just glad in a world where we know people like Roman Polanski use his position to be very demonizing to women. People like, Harvey Weinstein use his position to be very demonizing to women and getting a picture. That Ressa Tessa sat in her house, put up her camera, put it on her account, and these major corporations and video companies saw it and reached out to her. I look at it from that point of view. I like that he's in control. And as a Black person, that means a lot to me.
Gotcha. Yeah. That makes sense on that end. Yeah.
Go ahead.
She is in control of her story. Now, the sad part about it, her ex-husband is supposed to be releasing his story on YouTube today.
Yeah. Oh my God.
So is this going to be a battle? You know, like, what is to come out of this? Is he looking to gain? Is he looking to capitalize as well? Do you think that he's going to be able to gain the traction from his, from his story?
See, this is the other thing too, Sinead and Trinette, that everybody, 2024, we've been saying it. Everybody want to speak their truth, but your truth is not the truth, right? And so you have your truth, and especially if it involves somebody else, you talking about a situation, we don't know their side of the story. They don't have the camera, they don't have the microphone. Like, I can sit up here and I can paint a picture about anything that's going on, right? But guess what? And I can be passionate about it, and people be like, "Man, that's the truth." I just happen to be the guy that's in front of the camera and has the microphone at that moment.
Right.
But I think that we put so much emphasis on telling your truth that it gets in the way of understanding that, one, this relationship that we do have with social media is one where, I hear some black folks say I need to have a detox. And then I see other black folks who live on social media. They post more times than
All right.
So I'm trying to think, and then you when we have these larger conversations, much more serious conversations, whether it's about Gaza, whether it's about the election, whether it's about any issue that has affected Black America, we don't have the mental attention span anymore. I just came across this article that said that we don't have the attention span as we used to, right? Because they said just the simple act of scrolling will cause you to have a short attention span.
Wow.
So now are we putting ourselves in a trick bag where we may gain from being, from telling our story. We may capitalize from being so open, but at the same time, we're in a very manufactured place, and that could just go left. Brother Sinead, what's your take on this? Let me take our next pause.
Yeah, I think there's truth in that, and I think you missed the truth, because there is your truth, there's my truth, and there's a truth.
There it is. Come on.
And I think that's when I heard you speaking, I just started to think about, like, take it out of the rest of Tessa thing. Just think about hip hop, rap. People are telling stories about things that don't always align with them. They're telling stories about hoods that they're not from. They grew up in the county their whole life. So I think from the perspective of being a truth, as long as there's no harm done, and this is the hard part about being a capitalist or living in a capitalistic society. It's hard to notice if what is happening is harm to the community, to the culture, or is it harm to the rest of Tessa? So I think only time can tell. And the sad part is it might be a little bit of both.
It might be a little bit of both. And here's the other thing, right? Here's the other thing. The other thing is, I think sometimes, because we have this desire to be liked, and I'm saying in the context of social media, to be hearted, we go through we seek the craziest experience just to tell them on social media, right?
Yeah.
Like we go through harmful experience sometimes, right? And I'm not saying all of us, obviously.
Right.
But I mean, it's hard to create everyday content, especially when you say you're an influencer.
Yeah.
So you got to think of something new and fresh and dynamic every single day. And there is something where you have to I feel like, now I may be completely wrong on the Sinead you internet, but I feel like each time that content goes viral and you got a hit in your clip, and you're like, oh my gosh, there's another part of you that you got to give up, right?
Yeah.
There's another part of your life that's another part of your experience that you got to give up. And I think that's to Sinead, to your point.
Yeah,
that is something. Let me just share very quickly before we take our next pause. Suzette, my sister Suzette Speaks says, it feels like voyeurism. Like, I am appreciative of the lessons from her story, but do we all need to be in the group chat?
Right.
Suzette ain't never lied. She ain't never lied.
Never, right. I agree with that. Like, the group chat was, I was like, how do I
take me out?
Connect? Yes.
I'm about to send a message. Just delete my number, bro. I don't need to be in a group chat. Look, you know why? Because guess what? You ain't healed from your trauma. So now you passing your trauma through the screen. Now my brain, look, as much as I like to think I'm a strong person, certain messages get in, right?
Right. Yeah, I mean, that's the truth, because all of a sudden you see all of these comments, especially from Black women. That's why I can't trust a man. That's why I will never be married. That's why, so now you've opened, again, you're opening doors to the trauma, and people are expressing. So now you forget the trauma, you forget about the healing piece. Now you have this space where you can just vent, and it's not valuable venting. It's just, I'm just saying whatever, and I do have to say that she did acknowledge the fact that she took accountability. I did appreciate that of her, because again, her story is like so many of us, and she did say she was desperate for a family, and she wanted, to have a child, be married and so forth. And she saw really the good in him, you know. So I think it was just she just felt like it was time for her to release this and so forth. But she just ended up doing it, and where it just caught our attention. Now I couldn't sit past episode 1. I didn't have time for 50 parts.
Man, that's the other thing too.
I didn't have time.
Hey, Sinead, you got time to watch 50 parts of somebody's story, man?
Can I cuss? Fuck no. Straight like that. I just listen to I look for the footnote.
I ended up getting the clip notes, but I was literally after her first episode, I pulled out my own book. I said, I already know how
I'm gonna tell y'all, I'm gonna be honest with y'all, man. I can't do it. I can't do it. The moment I start to see people talk, I mean, you ever see somebody scrolling, then they up in the camera all close like this?
Right.
Y'all, I got something to tell you. I'll be like, scroll. Scroll.
I was like,
I'm not into it. Man, don't flood my timeline with trauma, bro. Like,
I didn't, and people were like, "How can you not watch?" I said, "Listen, because I lived through my own.
Come on, man.
You know the story. I had my own 50 part. I wrote about it. You know what I'm saying? So I didn't need that. I just did not have the time. But I don't, and I guess it. And then I started looking at it. So I guess it's no different from when our grandparents were watching the stories, or we watching, No,
it was different. It was different. You know what was the different? You know why it was different? Very quickly. You know what's different? The difference is we already knew coming into the room that was entertainment. That was on television. There was this, and it might sound crazy, but mentally, logically, we were like, that's on TV, therefore it's there to entertain me.
Right. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Whereas social media has become not just something that we read and look at, but it has become a part of us, right? Like our experience in existence is so wrapped up in what we put out there, right?
Yeah.
And I even see, this is hard for people, man, because you can't put out real stuff and then I seen some, y'all gonna die on this one. Y'all ever seen somebody be like, just because I put it out don't mean I actually believe it. So we putting out stuff we don't believe now?
Ooh.
I mean, you know what I'm saying? Like, what's the point? Just because I retweet it don't mean I believe
it. You know what, Farajii, real quick. I know we got to go to commercial. But
go ahead.
It's real important. The reason why I think what Resta Testa did is so impactful is because think about it. Like, this is a local, she let's be real. She an everyday person. And I feel like there is a market for people who can resonate with that compared to when they do dramatize this and put it on TV, then it becomes somebody that you are far connected to. If you realize that in media now, it's less about the stars and more about making everyday people's story heard, because that's what resonates with people. And like my sister said, I appreciate her for saying, I was desperate in that place. And I think from a psychological point of view, we should be pushing more Black women to tell stories, because we laughing, there's at least 5 people who got healed from her. I believe that so wholeheartedly. Even if she's not telling the truth, somebody needed to hear it. Like she was preaching in her own way on her TikTok pulpit.
That's true. That's true. I mean, I can see it from that perspective, because everybody does. You do have the average person, average woman who's going through this now and saying, you know what? I wasn't by myself. I fell in love with somebody, and I wasn't by myself. I, lost this, that, and the other. So you're right. I can't see that, because even as other art, some authors and I were talking and we were sharing the same story. And again, we were all trying to get our story out. She just used a creative way, but also made me think, like, I didn't need a publisher. I didn't need an editor or nothing. I could have just talked on my.
But you know what? It just goes to show you. And I agree. I understand what you say, Brother Sinead, and I hear you, Jeanette. I think that it's just this idea that a lot of folks don't feel like they can be heard. So social media gives them a platform to be heard. Now, the thing is, if you tell your truth, you tell your story, you share your thoughts on a situation, and then when people just when people don't agree with you, then you start to catch feelings. Well, why they don't agree with me? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And what will happen is that you start to tailor your view because you want to be liked.
Yeah.
And so a part of you becomes less authentic and more conformed because you want to be liked on social media. You want to have the popular opinion on social media. And let's just keep this real, y'all. Popular opinion doesn't always mean the right opinion.
No.
Or the best opinion.
Right.
Because some of the greatest Black heroes and sheroes of our history, they stood on business with unpopular opinions and regarded in history as being some of the greatest ones before us, right? So, you gotta figure out where you stand in that situation very quickly. The Bryce, the Damon Blissett, my brother, you said I saw the cliff notes and I was done. There it is. Janae said, this is partly the impact of lack of delayed gratification. People want everything quick, fast, and in a hurry. You're forcing a family because you have to have it now, or suicide because you had one bad day each. You're forcing your family. You said, yes, people will literally do anything for money. No honor, folks, when cash is involved. That's the other part of it. That's the other part of it. That is the other part of it. So we will see how the whole situation turns out, but it is what it is. Look, we got to take a quick pause. When we come forward, let's talk about a story that is actually very real. Let's talk about what's been happening to our people in this country and how one American city has officially apologized to its residents for its racist policy. The question is, what happens next in this city? Stay with us. That discussion is up next here on The Culture on the Black Star Network.
Black Star Network is here.
Oh, no punch! I'm real revolutionary right now.
Thank you for being the voice of Black America.
All momentum we have now, we have to keep this going.
The video looks phenomenal.
See, there's a difference between Black Star Network and Black-owned media and something like CNN.
You can't be Black-owned media and be scared.
It's time to be smart.
Bring your eyeballs home.
You dig?
Check this out. Joe Biden and Kamala Harris are investing a record $7 billion into HBCUs. Billions for campus improvements, grants, and debt relief. Billions more for HBCUs. Endless possibilities for us.
When you talk about blackness and what happens in Black culture, we're about covering these things that matter to us, speaking to our issues and concerns.
This is a genuine people-powered movement.
There's a lot of stuff that we're not getting. You get it, and you spread the word.
We wish to plead our own cause. Too long have others spoken for us.
We cannot tell our own story if we can't pay for it. This is about covering us. Invest in Black-owned media. Your dollars matter. We don't have to keep asking them to cover our stuff. So please support us in what we do, folks. We want to hit 2,000 people, $50 this month, raise $100,000. We're behind 100,000, so we want to hit that. Your money makes this possible. Checks and money orders go to P.O. Box 57196, Washington, D.C. 20036-0196. The Cash App is $RM Unfiltered. PayPal is R Martin Unfiltered. Venmo is RM Unfiltered. Zelle is roland@rolandsmartin.com.
All right, folks, welcome back to The Culture here on the Black Star Network, joined by our contributors today, my sister, Coach Trinette L. Collier, Relationship Specialist, and my brother, Shanidri Wakorfor, Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Specialist. As we talk about relationships, now, we talked about the intimate relationships with Risa Tessa.
Risa Tisa.
Risa Tisa. I don't want to mispronounce my sister's name.
You ain't Risa. Right.
Before we end up in one of her stories, I was watching. But we wanted to talk about relationship. But this final conversation I wanted to have is about the relationship between Black folks in American cities. And it's a different relationship that we are having, right? This is, and I think that we can all attest that there has been more talk about reparations and repairing the damage at this time. Over the past, I would say, what you would think, Brother Sinedu, but 2 to 3 years, we've been talking up these things more now than ever before. For a number of reasons, because of what's been happening across the country, like in states like here in California, where they have the Reparations Task Force and other places. New York City, I just read that New York City was trying to get some things happening. I think it was either New York or Boston. And crew, y'all tell me if y'all can find the information that there are groups of people in either New York or Boston that are trying to get reparations, but because of infighting, look at those relationships, infighting, they can't agree on how to move forward and calling out the city or the state to repair the damage that was done to Black people. So if somebody in the chat can check that out for me, let me know which city that's in. But let's go to the city of San Francisco. San Francisco. It was just announced that San Francisco has officially apologized to residents for racist policies. This is coming from NBC News. Take a look at this, folks. Supervisors in San Francisco formally apologized to African Americans and their decisions last week for the city's role in perpetuating racism and discrimination, with several stating that this was just the start of reparations for Black residents and not the end. The vote was unanimous, with all 11 board members signed on as sponsors of the resolution. According to Supervisor Shaman Walton, he said this historic resolution apologizes on behalf of San Francisco to the African American community and their descendants for decades of systemic and structural discrimination, targeted acts of violence and atrocities, as well as committing to the rectification and redress of past policies and misdeeds. We have much more work to do, but this apology most certainly is an important step, according to Mr. Walton, who is the only Black member of the board and chief proponent of the resolution. This is in San Francisco. So you're apologizing. San Francisco has apologized to Black residents for racist policies. San Francisco joins another major city, Boston, in issuing an apology. Y'all remember we talked about this. In the city of Boston, the mayor of Boston has apologized to Black residents. And as of right now, 9 states have formally apologized for slavery, according to the resolution. Brother Sinedu, I'm going to get your take on this one first. What do you make of this, big brother? What does this say? It's an apology. It's something that needed to be said and done, but is it all symbolism and no substance?
You said it poetically. I just want y'all to think about this, because I feel like when it comes to Black people, people like to minimize this. I'm gonna take it somewhere else. Shout out to my Asians, because I'm heading to your way real quick. Imagine in Tokyo in the 40s. Imagine after us dropping that bomb on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Imagine if we said sorry without a single check signed. Just imagine how people would look at us if that's all we did. That's how I feel about that ordinance. Don't even start with your apology if it's not starting with money. I know they have intentions to go down the financial route, but don't, you know how your mother say, don't come with me unless you have something good to say. Don't come to me unless you have it finished and ready. That is my issue here. I think it's good that San Francisco and Boston are doing this, but as a DEI practitioner, this is one thing I've noticed. Most organizations or companies that swear that they don't want to be racist, you know, the one mistake that they make that shows that they still want to be racist, the decision makers. It's always only one Black person that's on the team. Always only one Black person. So how is how you are represented showing the words that you're trying to represent? That's my issue.
I like it. I like it. What's your take on this, Finette? As we're talking, this is a different relationship, though, right?
Yeah.
So this is out of the context of the intimate relationship. But I think that for me, as I'm growing and understanding things, right? I'm understanding systems, I'm understanding the dynamics of power, and I'm understanding people.
Yeah.
It's important that as Black folks in this country, that we are very clear. And I said this in my first segment today.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? Like when it comes to Black America and the government, whether it's the city government, state government, or the federal government, the government is in bed with some groups, but they treat us like a sneaky link, a situationship in a lot of cases, right? Like we decide shit.
Yeah.
We decide shit. Yeah. We don't get all of the frills and thrills. We get enough of, we can, you know what I mean? They get their little we get breadcrumbs a lot.
Yeah, we do. And it does affect us, even down to our relationships, because now you're talking about families. You know, how's this going to affect the children? How's this going to affect the mothers, the fathers, and so forth? What is to come of these apologies? You know, because again, I think we spoke about this before, the trauma that Black families have to deal with on a daily basis. The conversations, you know, we skip over these conversations in our living room over our dinner table because we really don't think about it. Like it really does affect us. Like, how am I as a man? Or how is a man supposed to care for his family when he's up against all of that? So it does go hand in hand. So, you know, I agree. I need to see more. Like, you know, I appreciate the apology, but what is there to come behind, and how long is it going to take? Is it going to be another 10, 15 years before anything is actually done? So for me, at this stage of my life, I'm ready to see action. You know what I'm saying? Like we shouldn't take this long to talk and apologize or whatnot. So what is to come next? That's my question.
I think that's an excellent question. We got to take another quick pause. When we come back, I'm gonna share with everyone more details about what this mean, and more importantly, how will the city of San Francisco moves forward, especially by way of reparations. I'm gonna share with you some of those intimate details. So folks, stay with us. The conversation continues on the other side. Post your comments as we're streaming live on Big Brother Roland Martin's YouTube channel and his Facebook page. I would love to hear what you got to say as San Francisco apologizes to its Black residents for its racist policies, saying it is the first step in creating a new relationship with the Black community. What's your take? Join us in the conversation and stay with us. It's The Culture here on the Black Star Network.
You heard why we're marching, and it's really a launch. It's not even a march. We're launching a 42-week campaign. March the 2nd at 10 o'clock in Raleigh and 33 other state capitals and the District of Columbia. This is a historic move to mobilize the most powerful untapped block of voters in this country. Poor and low wealth voters who make up 87 million votes. And it's never been tried before. Never been tried before in history. At the same time, the same message, same focus. And when that power turns loose, they will not be able to figure out the political calculus. I don't know about you, but I'm ready to shake things up. I'm ready to get up out of the valley. I'm ready for God to put his spirit on us. I'm ready to be used to change this nation. And what we're saying is, can't we come together? Can't we come together around an agenda? You ain't got to like everything about Rembrandt. You don't have to like everything about Sangria. You don't have to like everything about Long Choir. But can we come together and say, it's time to end poverty as the fourth leading cause of death? It's time to have $15 and a living wage indexed with inflation. So every time inflation goes up, the minimum wage goes up. It's time to have health care for all. It's time to fully fund public education. Can't we come together? It's time to protect women's right to women's health. It's time to have affordable housing for everybody. It's time to stop the proliferation of guns. Ain't no way folk ought to be able to have more guns than they have food, more guns than they have meat on their table. That makes no sense. Isn't it time for division to be ended and love to take over? Can't we organize around that? Look at your neighbor and say, neighbor, I don't need to like everything about you, but can't we organize for power? Can't we stand for justice? Can't we love everybody for just a little while? Can't we come out of the valley? Can these bones live?
We wish to plead our own cause. Too long have others spoken for us. This is an opportunity for us to be able to speak to our issues. Y'all better understand something real quick. We ain't going nowhere. It is a continual battle that we see all across this country. Revolution will not be televised. The revolution will be streamed.
All momentum we have now, we have to keep this going.
He makes sure that our stories are told.
Roland Martin's doing this every day.
You can't be black-owned media and be scared.
All right, folks, welcome back to The Culture here on the Black Star Network. I'm your host, Farajii Muhammad, joined by my great contributors. We got my brother, Sinead Wakofor, Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Specialist, and my sister, Coach Trinette L. Collier, who is a relationship specialist and author. We're talking about how the city of San Francisco is just the latest city to apologize to Black folks in San Fran for its racist policies. And according to the only Black supervisor on the board, Mr. Shaman Walton, he said that this is an historic resolution, is a great first step for the work that needs to be done. He said we have much more work to do, but this apology most certainly is an important step. Now, here's the latest about what is being considered in San Francisco. It is the first, this reparation recommendation of more than 100 proposals made by a city committee to win approval. According to the African American Reparations Advisory Committee, they also proposed that every eligible Black adult receive a $5 million lump sum cash payment and a guaranteed income of nearly $100,000 a year to remedy San Francisco's deep racial wealth gap. Wow. Everybody's talking money. Everybody's talking money. First, Sinead, let me get your take on that, because you and I have been talking a lot about these latest demands from reparation in relation to reparations in cities across the country. $5 million lump cash sum and a guaranteed income of nearly $100,000 to eligible Black adults in the city of San Francisco. What is that? What do you make of that, bro?
I'm on two sides of this.
Okay.
I love the idea. It's a great start. I love that idea. And I always tell people, if what you did wrong, if the sin is incomprehensible, so should be the reparations. I cannot conceive enslaving another person, but y'all could. So the same way y'all say your economy cannot conceivably handle this, you have to use the same energy that you used to enslave. I'm sorry. You just have to use that same energy to create a solution that's inconceivable. Now, my issue with money, I have two things on this. As a Black person, I do follow that trend that says, you know, look at what happens when, you know, we get payouts. Sometimes we'll go and buy to go to the club and hookah and do all of that. Da, 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 da. And I hear that too. But I also believe this. It is not my job to police what anybody does with that money. Think about folks during the Holocaust, folks who end up getting payments as reparations. We don't know which one of those folks were already rich beforehand. We don't know which folks already had land before, and no one questions what they did with their money. Mm-hmm. So I think on that same tune, if we as Black people decide to take that money and go and freak it, that is on us. That is that's the part of the reparation is letting me decide what I do with mine. Mm-hmm. So I'm on both sides of this trend, but I'm more leaning towards, if it is a monetary payment and something enshrined in how much we're getting paid, I would also put the fact that there needs to be something there for education. Yeah. That needs to be important. Education or trade for those who choose to do that. Because having money without having an educational background in a society that we don't own, because with more money doesn't mean you own the society. Let's remember that. Right. If we don't have a back door for ourselves, we'll be in the same position in 20 to 30 years. And they know that because they're the one writing the checks. So that's my thought.
Yeah.
You on mute, brother. Hold on, you on mute.
Let me get that. There we go. Boom. What about you, Jeanette? What's your take on that? A lump cash sum or some other funds coming in or $100,000 for guaranteed income?
He said it all. I just want to know, do I have time to relocate?
Oh my gosh.
I just want to know.
Oh my gosh.
Do I have time to relocate? You know.
Well,
but
you know what? Let me just say, you might wait a minute. Hold on, because you in Atlanta, right?
Yeah. Are we gonna be there?
No. Let me tell you, Georgia got a long time before this conversation even had.
But I do agree that, of course, I would love for some money to be allocated for education. You know, definitely, because you do kind of see the cycle. It will reappear if we don't have. I'm with you. I don't want to police anybody's money, but I would like to see some funds be generated and invested in education in that city. You understand what I'm saying? So, you know, let's invest it in the teachers, the curriculum, update the curriculum and so forth for our Black children.
Well, here's the other, and I agree with that. But see, again, I think that there has been so much emphasis on money, Sinead, internet. So many of us, when we have these reparations conversations, even within the culture crew chat, you know, a lot of people are like, look, I'd rather have the money than, you know, say educational equity, or, you know, and the thing is, you got to think about not just for this present moment, but for the long term.
Right.
We got to think about for the long term, because what's the use? I mean, let's think about it. If we're, and I don't see San Francisco doing like a $5 million. I mean, that's a lot of money, folks. Yeah. That is a lot of money. And you have to have a very progressive government to some extent, whether it's on a city level, state level, and of course on the federal level, a very progressive government to even put certain things in place. And I know one of the things that they talked about on the state level here in California, they were talking about billions of dollars. And in some cases, the calculations of how much some advocates for reparations were asking for was more than the actual budget for the state of California.
Oh, wow.
And so when you got to ask the question that when we go to these lawmakers and ask for the dollar amount, right? It's like, is it going to be a realistic amount? And that's one of the great concerns. Now, here in San Francisco, in the city of San Francisco, the Mayor London Breed, she's a Black woman. She said she believes that reparations should be handled on a national level, and facing a budget crunch for the city of San Francisco, her administration eliminated $4 million for a proposed reparations office in cuts this year. Now, Brother Sinead, I started off this show today talking about your budget is a moral document, right? Your budget determines shows where your priorities lie. Just as much as America set aside money for the state of Israel, and you know, Black America gets a little bit here and a little bit of there every other year, whenever. If the budget doesn't show where you put your priorities or where you see the importance of it, if you're cutting $4 million to even establish an office, it just goes to show you that you got a lot more work to be done with this Black political leader, because she's not seeing the importance and value of even having a reparations office. You could talk reparations all day, but it's not until in politics, until you put money behind it, it's just rhetoric. It's just rhetoric. What's your take on that, bro?
I love when people talk about budget. So what I like my fact checking as well. I went to the our national debt clock. Okay, $34 trillion. Don't ever tell me about a budget, because what I learned in simple math or street economics, you don't got it, you don't get it. But somehow we found a way to go 34 trillion, which, if you want to take it to a national level, the national talk about reparations has described the amount in today's money in the tens of trillions. So if we can create debt for this, that, and the third, what's the big deal? Because think about it. This is my thought. We'll never pay this debt down that we have. Let me explain that to y'all. Because we hold the currency that the debt is in. We'll never pay it down. We can make other people who borrow from us pay it out, because that's the benefit of being the higher currency. But my issue with the young lady from San Francisco and talking about we should make this a national conversation. Okay, sweetie, when these tech firms want to come to your city, are you worried about what they're doing nationally or what the hell they're giving to you in your local municipality? I don't want to hear it, because San Francisco became what San Francisco became in this era off of those big corporations that were doing it locally. Ain't no Google in my backyard. So I don't know what the hell this woman is talking about.
So does that mean that the conversation is just, we just going to keep having these same conversations year after year, and it's just, I mean,
it could, you know, that's the purpose of an advocate, right? And like, that's the purpose of, well, it's a couple of things. One is that you got to have conversations on the state level just as much as you have a conversation on a federal level, right? Because state level, because the Biden administration and others have said that they really want to get the support of the states. And if you're talking about political organizing, you have to do that on a ground level in order for it to swell up to a national level. Yeah, you can mandate that. Now, that's what some of our black lawmakers like Representative Cori Bush and some others have put on the desk for the president to sign off, saying, Mr. President, you need to do an executive order to establish a commission to review and to look at reparations, to look at the impact of slavery and the possibility of reparations. That's what they have put towards, and I think that's a good move. But if you're talking about establishing, like here in the state of California, we have the reparations task force for the state. That's something that came down from Governor Gavin Newsom, that he greenlit that, right? Created a commission to look at that, right? Now, he's another one who says, hey, I think reparations are fine, but when it comes to giving individual or eligible black adults money, cash outright, he's not for that. He'd rather look at changes in the system versus putting cash, just direct cash in people's pockets. And that depends on where you stand on the conversation. Now, very quickly, for black people, we, for example, it says, according to the data, black people make up 38% of San Francisco's homeless population, despite being less than 6% of the general population, according to a 2022 federal count. There are only 46,000 black people in San Francisco. Wow.
Wow. Wow.
Wow. 46,000 in one of the largest cities in Northern California. Wow.
Wow. Yeah.
In the city of Los Angeles, black people only make up 8 to 9% of the population. Wow. So California, even though we're making progress with the state, at the end of the day, we still got a lot of ways to go. A lot of our people left California for a number of reasons, whether it's for cost of living or whatever the case may be. You can get more land and all of that stuff. But 46,000 in the city of San Francisco. And it just goes to show you that we got a lot of work to be done. Brother Sinead, what's your final word on this?
My final word is I hate to agree with a white man, but Gavin Newsom is right. I think black people should be very cautious, because you ask yourself this, even when they give these checks out, what are you about to do? Deposit in Wells Fargo and Bank of America? Ooh. The two banks that funded slave trade? Our banking is the black banking institution on these conversations? We need to make sure that we have the infrastructure to handle these checks that are coming. That is not only as it pertains to monetarily, but business wise as well. If not, what we're going to do, and they're smart, because think about stimulus. They gave us that money so we can give it right back to them. That's exactly what we did. They know what they're doing. They're not just giving you money without conditions. So I think as we're studying this, that's why I believe like money is great, but I think we need to look at something more tangible like land, something like education that you can now use to change.
That's true.
That's what
That's true. That's true. Absolutely. I would agree. I couldn't agree with you more, man. And you know what, for me, is that I think we need to bring colleges into these conversations, Sinead and Trinette.
Yeah.
You know, Harvard already said that they apologize for their involvement in the slave trade. You got some of these other Ivy League schools that said that they got involved. Well, you know what should happen? Our children should be able to go at a very either discounted rate or just completely tuition free. If you are the descendants of Black people in this country, if your grandparents were around in this part of the city for this amount of time, you get to go to college for free, courtesy of Harvard University, courtesy of this Ivy League or that Ivy League school. There got to be some different conversations. Like, if this is not money, and like I said, like you said, Brother Sinead, if it's not land, then let's talk about how do we advance the next generation to put them in a better position. Because I don't care about money in my pocket if my children, my son and my daughter, still got to go to a racist school, or if they got to be in a situation where they got to compete with other people, and yet this country has crapped on our ancestors.
Yeah.
What's the point? What's the real point? So this is going to be very interesting to see the least, and to say the least. And I think that an apology is good, but we need a plan of action, which is much better. And we'll see. Maybe the Biden administration will hear these calls a little bit louder, and will the president said we'll definitely do something. So we will see, folks. That's going to do it for us. I want to thank our two contributors, Brother Sinead. Yes, sir.
Hold on, let's because we ain't here for my sister. I want to make sure our sister got a chance to make her list.
Oh no, I agree. I need a plan of action. I have to have that plan of action. That's all I need to see. I would love the money too, but I need to know where that money is going and that plan of action. That's important.
There it is right there. My brother Sinead Wakorfor, thank you so much. My sister Coach Trinette Ellis-Collier, thank you so much. God willing, we'll see each other next week once again here on The Culture. Thank y'all too for being so good for the culture.
Thank you for
all right, folks. You're welcome, bro. All right, folks, that's going to do it for us. Thank y'all. Big shout out to the Online Culture crew. Thank y'all for making the show so great. I hope you enjoyed the conversation. Also, we want to thank Pastor Wendell Griffin for checking in and having that conversation to us about the Supreme Court. There's so much has been happening. Make sure y'all do your due diligence. Support us here at Black Star Network. Go to our website today at blackstarnetwork.com. Download the app for free and follow us on all social media. We would love to connect with you. Also, follow me, yours truly, at the Real Farajii on Instagram, at Farajii on the X platform, and at Farajii Muhammad on Facebook. Stay tuned. Up next at 6 p.m. is Rolling Mart Unfiltered. As always, never be afraid to challenge what's wrong, stand for what's right, while being yourself in the process. God willing, we'll talk tomorrow for another exciting edition of The Culture, right here, only here, exclusively here on the Black Star Network. Have a great evening, everyone. Peace.